Hello, everyone. Today is Monday, February 7th. This is the public Kubernetes Steering Committee meeting. This is a meeting that will be recorded and available on the internet later, so please be mindful of what you say and do. Please be sure to adhere to the Kubernetes Code of Conduct, and in general, just be awesome folks. So we've got a few things up on the agenda. I would encourage folks who are community members who have any topics that they do not see on the agenda to drop them there. And we've got one vote that we can see if we can take care of today, and then a few topics to discuss. So without further ado, let's jump into votes. So I think the only vote on our schedule right now is the working group batch vote, right? Do people feel ready to do that?
I'm ready. Let's go. Let's roll.
All right. All right. So steering, I guess, we'll go down the list. Ayes. Do we want to do raised hands? Do we want to do comments on? Eventually, there'll be comments on the PR itself. Let me actually link the PR. There you go. 62.99 in the community repo. And so was there anything outstanding for this? I don't think so.
I think they were still waiting on someone from Node to LGTM.
Node? Okay.
Yep, the last comment was asking for Derek to LGTM.
All right, so should we defer until we have that LGTM? I think we've got people checking in from apps and scheduling already, right?
I think Node is the only one left.
Yeah, I think it's probably fine for us to weigh in pending Node. Derek had already commented on it, and so they definitely have seen it. I think it's mostly a formality, but it should wait before merging, but I think we can go ahead and weigh in.
Agreed.
Okay.
Is there a I haven't been like incredibly tuned into the conversation, but is there a possibility that Node's going to come back with objections or things that we would need to address?
I don't think so.
It doesn't seem that way. It just looks like bandwidth, review bandwidth.
I think there was some question about what the runtimes. So the way it was engaging with SIG-Node was runtime support for specialized hardware, and the questions from Node had focused on how was that different than some of the existing efforts, like the device support going on in Node. So the concrete ask from Node was to first, like the first thing this working group does is define like what are we wanting that engagement to look like. And so it sounded like they were on board with that. And at that point, once that's better defined, it might be the case that SIG-Node like drops out as an engaged SIG for this, depending on what gets defined, which I think would be totally fine. So what they asked for was better definition as the first step, and the folks organizing this were happy to do that.
Gotcha.
I think that technically means we should probably postpone vote until Node does officially weigh in.
How's everyone feeling?
The ball, can we go ahead and slot in a liaison?
Yeah, sure.
That was the only other TBD that I saw in here.
I can take that.
Okay, cool.
I think you have 40 already. You might want to check your list. Okay.
And
I only have, I think, 3 or 4. I don't know.
So after the reshuffle, I think we balanced Bob a little bit.
Okay.
And then the other one was SIG service catalog is still planning on spinning down.
Yeah. So yeah, Bob's weighted total right now is 5 or so, compared to, I think we've got 4s. We've got a 4.25, 4.75. So Bob, you do have the most things. At the same time, you are I think the closest related to a few of the SIGs involved. So your call. I think the next person to potentially get more would be either myself or Paris.
I was thinking me because I'm
I
covering
can't believe we're fighting
Node.
over work.
I know.
You're sitting here like, y'all want this? Great, take it.
Yeah. But I'm happy for whoever wants to pick it up. Like,
Well,
Bob?
Go ahead. What was your pitch?
So what? Huh?
I was gonna say,
Tim
Bob,
was
just
gonna
take it.
suggest himself, I think.
so I guess it depends on whether this ends up as closer to Node or further away from Node, but as the Node rep, it could align for me.
you're
I
also
kinda like
auto
the idea of
scaling.
aligning with one of the SIG liaisons. So Tim is Node, I'm scheduling.
I'm auto scaling. Like
He's auto scaling as well. So he's got two of the 4.
maybe what this points to is we want to see that definition.
That node.
We
that
originally said
node
let's go and
result.
head and assign, but maybe we need to see that next level
Yeah.
thing for the most natural fit to make sense.
Okay. So I guess Tim, Bob, Jordan, one of the 3 of you. and we'll keep pushing. One of the 3 of you, if you're already in contact with Node, I would say let's prod that forward. And then hope to vote on this for the next public or the next
Yeah.
private.
I think hopefully if we get Node sign off, could do it async like probably by the end of the week.
Okay.
Yeah,
Great.
Feeling like that video
that would be
game
a good
fight.
opportunity if there are things people want to talk about on a call about it. Otherwise, if we're just waiting for the Node ACK,
Yeah.
then I'm happy doing this async.
Sounds good. Okay. All right. Community, last opportunity if you want to toss anything on the agenda. If not, we're gonna keep partying. Okay. So the next one was on the agenda was bumped a couple of times. So we want to make sure we do it in this meeting, and it's basically just to better understand like how what steering's ways of working are, and how we should be interacting with the community, whether it's on issues, pull requests, if there is expected SLAs, like does not having an assignee on a task an okay thing, right? So I think the answer to that one is no. I have there's a project board that we had before that we were not using in previous terms, or kind of like fell into disuse, and that has been I think at this point has a few more things on it than it used to. But I think we still have maybe a lack of assignees in a few places, and it'd be nice to like figure out what's our best way of kind of burning that stuff down. So opening the floor to thoughts.
I feel like if it doesn't have an assignee, we should assign things every meeting, at the very least.
Yeah.
We also got to make sure we carve off the time for that scrub, because we've often been not hitting everything on the agenda as it is.
Yeah.
That's where my next topic of offsite comes in.
So so I think this is a while back. I think I was a no to it. If we can't figure out a way to do this async, then yes, we should have one. But I think that we can figure out a way to do this async. So I think we should try that first.
I think the
Thoughts?
big goal of the offsite was mostly just like all
To
dedicated
reset.
to basically everyone dedicate some time. We all power through, like we're all juggling a whole slew of priorities. If we can like collectively schedule a day or something like that where we just go through and try and get through the backlog of things, where we know we're available for potentially bouncing stuff off each other, like then yeah, we could reset it and get it into a better state.
Cool. So I am going to stare at my calendar. I'm wondering if we can do this next week, same time. That's.
We just make it a thing to do it like every KubeCon. Like we all make it a point to come if we can, or virtually come, and then we have like a 4-hour thing, and then we know every year we have every year we have an 8-hour offsite. Well, because it's 4 hours. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense, except it doesn't align with the election cycle. So we do need sort of a first one quickly after an election changeover.
Yeah, I would say post-election, the first meeting becomes that scrub or something like that. But given we've been partying for a few months at this point, what do we want to do? Do we think it's something that we'd want to do for KubeCon, or I think my worry with the KubeCon suggestion is that we're kind of like stuck in multiple things going into KubeCon as well. It's like, is that something we want to commit to as well?
100%. I mean, I think that when I said KubeCon, I meant more like future, not necessarily catch up. So
okay.
Yeah, 100%.
All right. And your next topic around decision-making process for steering makes sense. So to read out the notes, how do we know when something is up for a vote, or when something has had a decent SLA to activity? How do we know when to put something on the agenda? So my feeling is that some of it will be an artifact of actually like consistently walking the board. Things should fall out and tell us like what's the most active thing next, right? So like we've got annual reports and making sure we nudge along the node stuff, and I guess any cleanup of triage of triage items. I know that Tim, you're also working on some liaison docs, Tim in Paris. So I think those are things that we could pick up in the near term.
And I think like the things that have manifested from this recently are things like, I mean, obviously when a SIG has all of its comments, it's ready for a vote, right? But we've had in the past 2 other experiences with other groups where their stuff was in, but we as a body weren't necessarily collectively together on it. So like, what is the SLA there for certain things? Like, I feel like from a contributor perspective too, like what does the contributor like expect from us as far as like SLA? Because right now it's like mostly going into the ether, and like that's kind of like their expectations of what happens here. So my thing is, if there's certain things that we can provide SLAs for, I feel like the better, because it also instills trust and like all these other great things. And like how do we know when to put something on the agenda? Because we have 100 things sitting in the community repo and the steering repo. So how do we know what priority is? Because as it stands right now, the Basone is the one that's setting the priority, right? But is that accurate?
Right.
Like that's kind of where I felt as the Basone the last couple of meetings. It was, oh wow, this kind of sets me up to be the Paris show. Like, because I can push the things that I want to push, right? So, but like at the end of the day, like, is that, an acceptable way for us to do business? Is kind of where I come in here. And I don't really have any good suggestions either. So that was more of like, this is open-ended discussion, obviously.
I'm hoping we can maybe seed some of that from liaisons working with their SIGs and other groups day to day. Like maybe it's as simple as having a column in the board that says like needs discussion on meeting, right? And we drag it into that column. We make sure we burn down that column every meeting, and then, you know. Christoph has his hand up.
Yeah, just gonna comment. Like I appreciate what you're bringing up there, Paris. I don't know that I'm personally that concerned about it from a, like, in particular, like the setting priorities perspective. We don't have a like one continuous chair that is always kind of doing and setting those priorities, and that would have that control in perpetuity. I think the fact that, number one, we choose to kind of self-organize and basically appoint a new chair every month, who's going to be doing that role and setting the agenda. I think it's effective for now, and I don't have any concerns. Like I have enough trust as far as like the remainder of my colleagues to be able to kind of have that identifying eye as far as what is important or not. So I'm not sure that we need some explicit process for priority setting. I do think we can and should be better about surfacing things that need to be talked about so that it can at least be determined like what at least on the list, and then having the bosun just go through and sort the list based on importance and urgency and that kind of stuff. It's that part seems like it's been working. I think it's this, personally I feel it's like the making sure that we surface and we don't forget things is the more important part that we could probably use slightly more structure around.
And that's like one of the many things that I'm talking about here on like, and that's when there's 100 things and everything's on fire. What's up? Like that's the age old adage, in my opinion. Like when everything's
just put this over here with the other fire.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that happens with us a lot. So that's like from somebody that hosts a lot of meetings here, like that from that perspective. So yeah, no, I get 100% agree with you.
So Jordan and Dims have their hands up. I'm not sure which of yours went up first.
I think it was Jordan.
I'll be quick.
Jordan, okay, go for it.
I agree with stuff. I'm not concerned about abuse. I'm concerned about like visibility and just knowing who has the ball. Like,
yeah,
is this thing waiting on steering? Is it waiting on the person who opened the issue?
Yeah.
Is it waiting on some external team? Like, what's the next step? And I think the important things get pinged eventually, but after a lot of unnecessary delay. So we can tighten up that delay by being clearer about what's the next action and who is it depending on.
Yeah.
Hi. So one of the things, I agree with what Jordan said. I agree with Paris. We need to give some kind of information to the community. But my thought is slightly tangential to that. There's been a bunch of times where we end up saying, "Hey, we are the policy body, and we'll take our time to do what we do usually, and it's going to so." People are waiting on us in the sense that I've heard people say, "Hey, if I knew that steering was worried about this, why didn't they just come and talk to me and put me on the agenda, and like I would have come and talk to you and give you a more complete picture." And then they're not really waiting on us, more than like, "Hey, I wish I was included in this kind of a situation," kind of thing. So that kind of situation is what I'm a little bit more worried about, rather than the usual things that we end up dealing with.
That could be a liaison thing too, as well. Going back to that, just getting better with surfacing them and putting them on the agenda instead of like asking them to come on the agenda and stuff. I think that would be good.
So for things
So
for things like the batch proposal or these other things that don't necessarily have a specific owner, maybe we should just like, okay, here's the proposal, and like have an assignee that's essentially their job to keep track of that until we get it to a point where we assign the liaison and it merges. So at least for the items that are basically without a strict owner, we just assign a temporary owner till then.
Yeah.
I like that. I dig it.
Yep. I think anything that has moved past and I'll share my screen. And hopefully that works. Let me know if you can't see my screen. I think anything that moves past the, okay. I think anything that moves past the inbox, right? That's unprioritized, like anything that's in this column should have an assignee to push forward. Which means we've got things that are in progress that don't have assignees, and then we've also got things that are blocked without assignees, but also potentially things that might just get closed out. Right? And so these are annual reports. Yeah, looks like. I think that's probably done at this point, right? The annual reports generator. Are there improvements?
Yeah, I think that's a feature request of
yeah, that was a follow-up.
Yeah, that's a follow-up. Yep.
Gotcha. It looks like everything else is annual reports for the respective SIGs. So. Cool. All right, did we want to try to do a walk after we finish the other topics?
Let's do it.
Yep.
Let's try it. Let's try it out.
Yeah, let's go.
All right, Tim, you're up next with the election committee.
Yeah, so this is a slightly funky one. Just as we were coming on board, there was some deduplication and clarification that we wanted to do between Code of Conduct Committee and Steering Committee with respect to how we resolve potential conflicts. So formalization of if you're on one or the other, you pick one. If you've been elected to both, and you do one. And in discussion on the issue there was a question of, well, are there any other conflicts? And as I was trying to figure out where we could slot one piece of text in the right place, I stumbled on also that we have this election committee. I put it in quotes. It's not chartered formally as a committee, but it actually operates as a committee, and properly so, because there has to be confidentiality and trust in the process. They're collecting votes and then publishing a result. So they operate as a committee, not chartered as such, but then also there is conflict there as well, because people who've been on that committee have chosen not to, or effectively refused to run, because if you're running for steering committee and yet you're running the election, conflict of interest. So you
cannot. It's written down somewhere. You
I
have
did
to make a
not
choice there
find that written, but so as I was trying to parse out where we should document these to match what we do and what we want, I wanted to bring that up publicly to say, here's a gap.
Christoph?
Yeah, before we start an election cycle, the way the election process has run, and this is written down somewhere, I'm just like poking around for the specific links and process and stuff, but the elections is kind of run, it is run kind of similarly to a committee, but it's temporary, and it's formed by recommendations from contributor experience. So contributor experience kind of goes ahead and assembles what it believes is like, assembles the election officers to do that role. And then those folks are signed off by the steering committee, the active steering committee of the day. And because the steering committee doesn't like directly handle the nominations for that, Contrib-X, and then the steering committee itself signs off on that. There's at least two different bodies that are signing off on the folks that are in that role, but it's not a role that's held in perpetuity. It's one that basically assembles for the 2 months or so that the election cycle is held, and then once the election is done, immediately disbands.
So a few of us link the places where it's documented currently. If we want to harmonize that or put that in a central place that makes notes of other committee conflicts, that seems fine as well. But it is at least documented.
Yeah, I think we should synchronize this in the community repo, because we have documentation on the steering. We have documentation on the steering stuff as well, and Tim has the PR basically out for community and steering. So like, I think we should just get the election stuff into either its own repo or the community repo. I think the community repo is probably the right place for it. Related to elections and the time-bounded nature of the hats. This is something that comes up in like SIG release as well, right? Where you have release team leads kind of executing that role for a bit of time. Same with like the emeritus advisor for the team. And then what eventually happens is we kind of go through that that retro or the series of retros that we do, and we kind of did the same for the election committee this time around, where there are, one of the concerns was that because it is a time-bounded effort, there are things that fall out of the retro that maybe, we don't have a group of people actively working on, right? So I believe that within contributor experience, there's work to make like an elections sub-project, but I think we're saying this just needs to be a committee. Bob.
I was just going to mention, like, the last outcome was it was going to become a sub project. I don't think it does need to be an official committee. Personally, it is honestly really hard to get people to even volunteer for the position, and we usually wind up having to dig deep because, like, people do also have to be trusted community members to be a part of it.
Allison, I'm actually curious for your take since you have been doing this.
Yeah, so I would say, like, yeah, the idea was brought up a couple of times to make like elections like a long-standing group, because if we want to run elections again for other purposes, there is like a group of people who could facilitate that, but that's a lot of overhead, right? So like at this current moment, kind of keeping it the way, like keeping it with the whole, it spins up when it's needed is the way forward, I feel. And if we get more kind of support, or we find ourselves running more and more election kind of based things, we can kind of figure out how to make this a long-standing thing. That was my take. That's my thoughts on that.
Tim?
So one thing that I want to make sure that we specifically, so I agree. I think it should be a short-lived thing for the purpose of election. I think sub-project makes sense. The one specific caveat that I was concerned about was in the chartering process and the governance hierarchy of things. If this body is doing things that are private, confidential, never publicly released, like mapping of individuals' votes back to individual identity, our chartering process implies that is, or explicitly says that that is the domain of a committee. And how do
I don't think they're doing that.
They don't.
I'm sorry, Bob. Go ahead.
I was saying they don't. They do not have any access to people's actual votes.
Yeah, but so that's as long as the implementation is such that that's the case, that they're not keeping something secret, or they're not privy to secret information, then that would affirm that they don't have to be a committee. As long as the mechanism keeps that anonymized, it feels like it's not a conflict, but it almost reads as conflict today.
The only stuff that they have like sort of privy to is if someone fills out an exception form, and in which case
I was going to say, yeah,
and in which case they see the person's applicant to be a voter, but that is the extent of the sort of private information they have access to.
Cool. So sounds like a sub project. Do we have, I mean, outside of the retro doc for the elections, do we have a kind of running list of things that need to be fixed? Because I think we still need to solve the, like, let's make sure that actually, like, we burn down the issues from the election retro, which could be solved with the sub project.
The specific thing there with respect to code of conduct, I'll get the PR updated for that, and that'll be taken care of.
And are there many other conflicts? I know that you know, we had the SRC on, a few members of the SRC, maybe a meeting or two ago, and one of the things that came up where they're looking at proposing new members. Currently, the SRC essentially proposes their own members, and that is something that I think can and should be open to the community to propose as well. So how do we process that?
So my personal opinion here, I don't see any other conflicts that are like explicit, that are going to be conflicts 100% of the time, or even the majority of the time in the community. I think we've designed our community to try and minimize those conflicts and to extend trust wherever we can. And you know, as long as we're being transparent with processes, then that gets us to the goal of minimizing those conflicts. I kind of again, this is my own personal opinion, I kind of don't want to go looking for other conflicts or stuff that are out there, for the purpose of, like, again, I want to extend trust to the community whenever we can. But if situations arise, like, again, the fairly obvious one that we're addressing at the core here, where the code of conduct and the steering committee, like those, the code of conduct kind of needs to effectively do their job. They need to be kind of arm's length from the lead governance community. So, like, where we've got like a clear issue that we need to address, I think we should address it. I think if something arises in the future where there is a conflict, we can kind of revisit this policy and, again, iterate on the work that we're already doing to kind of formalize the practice that we've already been doing, but get it written down. We can iterate on that later. As far as SRC is concerned, again, just like any other body within the community, I feel like we should, you know, extend trust and encourage transparency wherever possible. But unless there is a direct concern, the steering committee needs to get involved and, like, force the SRC to change in response to an issue. I think the SRC, just like every other SIG and community group here, has a duty to kind of govern themselves, unless there's like a specific reason that we need to get involved. So if the SRC is, again, looking at that process as far as adding new members, I think any community member can say, hey, SRC, we would like you to be more transparent with your selection process around this, and how can you address this concern, and give SRC the opportunity to respond to that and say, like, okay, here's how we're going to address that concern around transparency in member selections.
Yeah, so they're actually aware of that, and then said they're working on it already. I think having that, like, opening that opportunity to folks is my main concern, because as far as I know, to date, the selection process for SRC is a black box.
I think they've been working on it, like, in my perceptions, especially with the associates role and that kind of stuff, which is something that you can apply for to get access, at least to the public stuff. And I think the idea behind that is to encourage opportunities for folks to be seen and try and build that trust with that community. Because, like, again, SRC being a fairly trusted role, like anything else, you kind of have to be seen to
I think that's still
involved.
A selection. I think that's still a selection as opposed to an application for the associate, but I may be going too far into this. I didn't want to try to, like, unbox all of that right now, but I do believe the associate is selected by the SRC, not they don't apply. I could be wrong. Just note, I could be wrong.
There's not a formal application process like some SIGs have, but I don't see that much.
You get plugged.
I think they were talking about adding that.
Yeah.
Like that was one of their goals, was to make like improve that process and make it more transparent. So,
but I think without turning this into what is the Google form you fill out in order to end up in an owner's file as a reviewer or approver, like the community process is relatively lightweight. You show up and do work, and maybe you say like, hey, I'd be interested in helping if there are openings that show up, and next thing you know, you get selected because you're there doing the work.
So like back to the original core issue there, Tim, is there anything else there that you wanted to like raise or have concerns about specifically around that conflicts thing?
Yeah, I think we're good. I had tried in my original writing, and I'll revisit it, but I tried to say like, here's some known issues, but generally the philosophy is if there's a conflict, the individual will choose one path and self-resolve the conflict. And I think the community then is empowered to sort it out. In the vast majority of cases, we're just going to do the right thing.
All right, so let us party. We've got 20 more minutes, and we've got 2 more topics, as well as selecting the next bosun for March. So Christoph, you want to take it away with the steering committee session for KubeCon?
Yeah, I think we talked about this like very briefly, momentarily, a month ago or so. So I'm bringing it back up. I had on my to-do list and didn't until this morning open up issue to ask about this. But basically, so we've got the maintainer track deadline is a week from today, and wanted to see if there is interest in doing, like in previous, we've done like AMAs, panels type sessions and stuff with the steering committee at KubeCons. I think we've found previously that like there wasn't as much value to the virtual ones because we have a public meeting virtually right now. If somebody from the community wants to come meet us, they know where to find us on a regular basis. But having the opportunity for in-person discussion has kind of shown some value in previous. So just want to see like what the appetite is here, if anybody has strong feelings one way or another. I know we've got some we basically got some folks who are like, I'm going as long as things are safe to go. And there's definitely a few no's that are the folks that are not going to be able to attend one way or another. Yeah. Dims?
Yeah, I think it was appetite and availability. So Dims, you have some notes?
Yeah, so my feeling here was, let's put something on the calendar. And if we are able to make it, good. If you're not able to make it, we'll ask the people, CNCF folks, to just remove it from the calendar. So that's the way I was thinking about it. Even if we have like 2 or 3 people, we should show up and like have a talk with whoever wants to talk to us.
I would agree. Worst case, like we, from my time in doing it, like there's always another maintainer session to slot in somewhere. So if we end up not being able to use the space, that makes sense.
Okay. Then if there's no objections, then I'll take the item to submit a maintainer track session to the chairs, and we'll take it from there. I'll leave TBD as far as who's attending just yet, because I think for most of us, it's again somewhere between a no and maybe. So I'll leave it open-ended for right now.
If you do need to put down submitters, and you probably will have to, you can put me down as a co-submitter if you want. I should definitely be there. All right. Any other comments on that one? Away we go. Okay, Paris, have you talked to your groups about annual reports?
I haven't. So that's why I put it down there. So I put it down there.
And one of them opened the PR already.
I know. So my day today, y'all, is I'm going to be all up in my group's annual report stuff. So I put it down there as a reminder that I'm also behind and I will be doing this today. So if y'all have not connected with the chairs of your groups yet, today's a great day because I'm doing it too. So and yes, definitely read the liaison doc. Like we put a lot more stuff in there for y'all to like instigate with conversations and stuff like that. But yeah, Jordan also had a win. So
Dims?
Yeah. So I was vacillating between like telling people explicitly to run the maintainer's utility or not. So, just coach them into like running the utility once and see what pops up. Can you all please do that when you're doing it?
yes, I'm writing that on my what to say as a liaison notepad right now. So I can share that with you too.
It's eye-opening. It's eye-opening in certain places because there are a few things that the tool does that and there are maybe like I left some feedback I think in the repo around like if something is tagged as multiple SIGs, the tool kind of says like, hey, you should make sure it's listed as this SIG or something, right? Like, is that an expectation that we have? Like I think it allows you to ask some interesting questions about some of the things that your SIG or your sub project owns. So like a lot of our stuff for SIG release was already up to date, but there were a few things that fell out, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. We should go poke around there. So it's like solid, really solid work, Dims and folks who have been working on that tool. It's awesome.
Do we need to make any pivots now too? So that was my next question. Is like, now's a good time if we need to make any hard changes to either the process, the deadlines, or anything like that. Right now we have people who are supposed to have drafts by like next week at some point, end of week. And then, so it's like, 2 weeks of work to get a draft. And then end of month is a merged PR. We're good to go.
I think we should still be good, but especially based on like how dense the template is. Like it's just like it's chock full of good information that kind of like forces you to do the right things. So I think we're good on deadlines, maybe, hopefully.
And it's all formatted the same way.
I know a lot of people who were basically slammed last week, and now that enhancements review or enhancements freeze is done, a lot of folks were saying like, we'll take a look at this like starting next week. So based on how long it took folks to get through it, like for Windows, I think it's actually pretty doable in a week or two.
Oh, good.
Something else in terms of, I think something else in terms of like just this, right, is, make sure that your SIGs are also using the opportunity to say, like, if I wasn't able to easily get this information because I didn't have access to a tool, or or we don't have a process in place to do the thing that the annual report is looking for, is that something I consider moving into the next, year or so, right? Because like if I didn't know how to find owners or something, right, and it wasn't a thing that we needed to do day to day, I'd be like, we should probably do something that allows us to do that, right? So that that's maybe a bad example because Dims has the tool now, but like for other stuff, right? Metrics on metrics on other places within your project, your sub projects. Cool. All right. Well, we are at the bottom of our agenda. So before we can stare at the project board for a hot second, but first I'd like to select the next bosun for March. So if anyone is interested in doing that from steering, please. So I think we've had Paris and Jordan so far, right?
What'd I do? Oh, okay, never mind. Never mind. I got it. Never mind. I finally I tuned in. I was
like... Sure, I'll take a swing for March.
I was about to say, someone that had a lot of opinions, like Christoph, should take the should take that lead. So enjoy the guides at the top. So
they're really good. They're really good. And if you're not slammed and actually read them, then like your meetings will go even better than this one. It has been a week, man. It has been a week, a month, a year. But no, awesome documentation on the vote for the votes and stuff. All right, let's do a little jam on the board.
Damn it, let's go.
Jam it.
Jordan and I are actually going to be we're going to be perma chairs, and then like all of y'all do the hard work. Okay, so that's our new Jordan and I's new role in this committee. So Jordan and I will set the tone, damn it, and then y'all do.
You mean the crippling anxiety of public speaking isn't getting you down? All right. So do we want to have the annual reports on here? Or do we think that's too busy?
My personal gut is it's like too busy, at least for the like all the individual SIGs.
Yeah, okay.
It might actually be worth having a separate board just for reports.
Oh, actually, yeah. Last time we did do a checklist. So like when the liaisons merged to PR, we went in and just did I'll set that right now. I'll just copy the one from last year.
Okay. Cool.
I think in last year have added the ability to link in PRs so that when they merge, it automatically crosses them off too. So that'll, if you just link.
Yeah, this board is already set up for automation. So once these things kind of move through, they'll automatically go to the done. All right. So should we walk backwards? What's blocked? And was this something we could close, the license exemption?
I think we were all in agreement on that one and just need to oh, sorry, I was thinking of the other one. Never mind. Sorry.
Yeah, so this one, we kind in the GB meeting, we kind of asked for a blanket MPL 2.0, and they said no, and they would only approve for specific repositories. So it's out of our hands, and we can close this now.
Okay.
Can you summarize that in the comment?
Do you want to do it? Yeah, you want to do that, James? While I keep it partying.
Thanks.
Actually, I will. Talking about assignees. All right. Alibaba account for Minikube. Ihor, do we have an update? Is Ihor still here?
He's dropped.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, maybe just ping him on the issue again.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of stuff that we miss. Speaking of, like I got my little finger out. Speaking of, like, speaking of stuff that we miss. Like I always want like a CNCF update here, because like we do miss, I think, like CNCF stuff. You know what I mean? A lot, and that's why we invited Eeyore. I feel like we should ask Eeyore what's up. You know what I mean? Every meeting that we don't. We don't do that.
We should have specifically called.
What's happening?
Yeah.
Like, I think we do have a little slot. We do have a little slot for it on the agenda. We just CNCF updates. We just didn't put anything there.
And I didn't even do it when I did it either. So I'm also calling myself out as well. So
yeah. So maybe we can have, maybe we
just
can
never had
have
the
Igor
time.
populate that. Maybe we can have him pre-populate it, right?
Yeah. We also just never have the time.
Time is the enemy.
Chatty Cathy.
All right, so we said this was actually annual report improvements, right? So
Yeah, rename that if you want.
yeah.
With your fancy prowl commands. God.
Gotta get that extra dev stat.
God, I know.
Gotta
get
it.
that grid. Gotta get that grid.
There's actually a tool that Tierney was working on that I've been poking at called Insights. It allows you to like scrape all of your like GitHub comments and review stuff. And it's like, yet another thing that I want in Go, but I end up writing the code for. But this is, so now that this is improvements, we'll say that this is prioritized for now.
That's it.
Liaison role.
Retitle, not rename, but.
Oh no. Oh no. So close.
Just padding the stats some more.
Exactly.
Well, while we're padding, I'm gonna go like, oh. All right. So liaison role documentation. I feel like this is in flight. Y'all had like a HackMD going, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so I'll leave it in progress. It has an assignee, accountability section to.
I believe this was
COC
waiting
charter.
for our meeting with the COCC.
Cool.
Yep, it's on the agenda.
Okay.
We meet joint on Thursday of this week.
Okay, cool. So I will leave this in box for now. Missing documentation license. Is this the one we decided?
That's the one that we're going to close.
Yeah.
I think there is they opened a PR. Yeah, the CCBY documentation license there too. Just for the record too, like every other group that I talk to with regard to having to like explicitly license stuff, they literally have to call it either explicit files or name explicit directories. You can't just put them at like the root and expect people to know which is
exactly.
which.
Yeah, the license docs or something like it's, yeah. Solving conflicts of interest with the, okay, all right, that's in progress. Google Workspace automation. This, I've seen various things in flight for this.
This
right?
I'd put in the backlog.
Okay.
Yeah, we're blocked heavy there.
Yeah.
What are we blocking?
The block is the fact that we can't migrate more than 50 people a day from Google without Christoph's hacky tool. And we need to get the tool to a better place. And then we can give the guidance to the SIGs or we do it for them or some kind of migration effort.
I believe there was more in there
So
beyond the mailing list too. We might want to break that out because the mailing list one is one we could potentially solve.
All right, so I'm going to leave it in block for now. And then
if we have the details, like what the block is, and yeah, if we can break pieces out, that would let us make progress on something.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is me. I think this is closed. I think I just have to update documentation on the maintainers list to include the Kate's infra. Approach to handling policy, related outcomes from annual reports. I feel like
I think this is something that we need to talk about at some point. Put it on the agenda and go through it and like come up with ideas on what to do and how to do it.
Christoph's first agenda item.
we did actually talk about this one before, and it was the outcome was at least anything that could be public would be done in a GitHub issue and assigned to the SIG.
Right. Did we also talk about the private ones, Bob? That how do we deal with it?
No, I don't know if we talked explicitly about the private ones. So we can probably follow up. Like if we do want to follow up there, but at least the public policy we can that one's 100% on me. It's just I eat too many things.
It's all good. It's all good. Yeah, it's all good. All right, refine rules for exceeding maximal representation on SE election. We said we were going to close this. I don't remember the reason why. I
think we are ready to close unless anybody has any objections.
I don't think there were any objections. My only anything needed to be clarified in the doc that prompted Josh to open this in the first place, like to take the discussion here and like make it clear. Yep, we really mean this, and here's why. But
yeah, I think I was initially assigned because this is some shape of this has happened to me twice. So allow me to just read through what's happening again, and it probably is fine to close. I think it was just language in some doc somewhere that was not as clear as it could be. CSC members should automatically be voters. Yeah, this is prioritized. Create a charter template for working groups. These seem reasonable.
I'm just looking at the clock, Stephen. I think we are at time.
We're at time. Oh, we had so much fun going on the board though.
We actually got to the board. I think this is the first meeting in ages where we got to the board.
Success. Well, it was a pleasure hanging out with you all. We will so the next one coming up will be the private steering committee meeting, but after that we will see you in March. Thank you everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you very much. See you in March or sooner.
Thank you.
Bye. Yeah. Bye.